Hello guys, so continuing my Kibbe series, today I'm gonna compare soft dramatic to other types. I'm gonna leave the link on my Kibbe playlist down below if you're interested. I've already done 5 main types: classic, gamine, natural, romantic and dramatic, in comparison to other types. Now we're gonna go more specific about soft dramatics and what is the difference. Many of you guys asked me to do this comparison, especially after I've just done the style review of Sophia Loren. She's soft dramatic. So I don't think that you have to know all those types and you have to categorize yourself. You have to name your type to look better, look more stylish and things like this. It's just more for those who are interested to go deeper into their own bone structure, their own look, who wants to see the difference more about different kinds of women, how they're built, their bone structure, their different features, their flesh, their musculature, and how they look in general in different kinds of clothes. Basically, this is kind of a game that we're playing here. Today we're gonna compare soft dramatic to other types, and let's first remember what does the book Metamorphoses of the Kibbe is saying about how soft dramatics are built. Yang is bold, tall, strong, sharp. Yin, soft, rounded, smallish. So those things have different combinations in different bodies. Those two energies. Each body has its own balance of those two energies. So if we talk about soft dramatics, it is the overall combination of bold yang with a pronounced yin undercurrent that creates this image identity category. So your yin-yang balance is a bold, exotic physicality that is combined with a powerful, sensual essence. He talks about essence a lot too. We're not boxes. It's not only the body. It's also connected to you as a spirit, to your vibe. Now I'm gonna read some characteristics of this body. But he says that small deviation here and there is possible if it does not upset your yin-yang balance. So the most important thing is your yin-yang balance. So their height is moderate to tall, usually 5 feet 5 inches and over. So it doesn't mean that soft dramatics will be extremely tall. They can be though, because their frame, their bone structure is still dramatic, which is elongated and sharp. Body type is fleshy, unless ultra thin, particularly through the bust and hip area. Usually have long legs and arms, which can become fleshy in the upper arm and thigh areas without exercise. Usually have moderate-sized waist, which can become thick. Bone structure large and angular. Long limbs and large hands and feet may be long or narrow or wide. Facial bones are prominent or sharp, nose, cheekbones, jawline. If your bone structure is narrow, particularly in shoulders, hands, feet, wrists, or ankles, you may think of yourself as delicate. This is not true, for the extreme length offsets the narrowness. Facial features: full, lush, sensual, and exotic. Large eyes, full lips, fleshy cheeks. If there's any words you don't understand, you just check them out in the dictionary, because the words that he uses, they are very certain. And why we need to know this? You know, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, for example, a soft dramatic woman can do a haircut or hairstyle that just stops looking proportionate enough with the rest of her body, for example. Or clothes lines, not the style. Anyone can wear any style, like you can wear classic style or boho style, whichever you choose. But it's the lines and the fabrics and the clothes, just the way you built your outfit. This is what creates that contrast sometimes, or creates harmony, whichever path you choose to go. But if you're aware about this and you can see the difference, helps us just to see more differences. And it's helping us to be more objective about ourselves and about other people. And yes, street style fashionistas are breaking the rules, but it's the next step for us if we want to go there. And if we don't, we just want to be more proportionate, more within our own category and feel cozy and like at home. So this is basically the goals of those videos. Let's compare now soft dramatic women to other types. I was trying to find the pictures of these women actually standing next to each other, because the angle of the picture is same, and it's so helpful to see those differences. Sometimes I couldn't find just the picture of this type and this type standing together. So let's first talk about soft dramatic and dramatic women. What do they have in common? They both have dramatic frame. What does it mean? They have elongated bones and sharp bones. Not squarish, not blunt, and not rounded and soft, and not wide. Basically, they are both angular. They both have sharp elongated bones, whether in their faces or in their body. Sometimes in their faces they can be wider, but dramatics are more square and sharp looking, more dry looking. Soft dramatics look softer. They have softer flesh, especially here in the thighs or the upper arms areas. They look more lush, more ornate. Dramatics just look drier, not when they underweight or overweight. You can be underweight or overweight, you still remain to be the same type. It's just sometimes maybe it's harder to understand, harder to see. But in both cases, soft dramatics can also be ultra thin, or they can be very lush, and dramatics too. But dramatics slightly more straight, can be slightly more straight in figure, sometimes, not always though. Yeah, so dramatics normally just look narrower and slightly not as lush and voluptuous as soft dramatics. Soft dramatics have slightly different vibe. When dramatics, for example, are wearing straight blazers, straight suits without waist emphasis, they look very elegant because they are frame dominant, they're not curve dominant. So when you're thinking about dramatics, you don't perceive their curves and lushness at the beginning. You just perceive that vertical line and slightly sharp features. So that's why when they're wearing those no waist emphasis suits, for example, it's not looking awkward on them because it's framing their body very nicely. And if soft dramatic is going to wear this, it's just not going to sit on them. So normally soft dramatics we perceive as figure. When we think about soft dramatic, we remember their curves. And they're curve dominant. That means that the clothes just sits differently on them. If you wear the straight blazer on them, it's just not going to work because it's going to be like head and then pretty wide and long. It's not going to accommodate their curves. Or for example, soft dramatics, I think it's the only type they can actually pull off huge backcombed hair and pretty stiff hair. And it's not very popular nowadays. I know it was much more popular in the 60s, but they are the ones that can really pull that off. And it will look slightly too much on dramatics. So that's another thing that you can maybe try. Romantic. What do they have in common? They have softness in common. Softness of their flesh. Roundness. They're both lush, voluptuous. The difference is romantics are short. They have shortened bones. They look shorter. The bones are wider. Their bones just look more delicate facial bones too. For example, if we look on those two ladies, they look pretty similar. And it's not that Beyonce is super small, but it's just the overall structure, the overall frame. If we look at her, we don't perceive her as elongated. We perceive her as soft and pretty delicate in bones, especially here, delicate in this area, in the chest area, in her face. Soft dramatics have more sharp, more prominent bones on their faces, and on top they have that flesh. Romantics have less prominent bones in their faces. They just look more delicate. Also, if romantics wear something with super big pattern, huge flowers, or they're wearing very large eyeglasses, very large earrings, as a contrast, they can look even more petite. They can look slightly disbalanced if we talk about proportion. And soft dramatics, they can pull off big, large elements on their look wherever there it is. Huge belt, whether it's huge earrings, huge necklace, huge hair too. Romantics can get lost slightly in huge hair, and soft dramatics, they don't. Theatrical romantic. What do they have in common? Again, they're both very ornate. They look great in ornateness. Theatrical romantics are just small. They're both soft, lush, and voluptuous. Theatrical romantic is small and has thin and sharp bones, and pretty short, and much smaller facial features as well. Soft dramatics are just larger. So you can do same test as with romantics. For example, theatrical romantic probably would not be able to pull off huge details in their outfit as a pattern, necklace, or earrings, something like this. And soft dramatics can pull that off. Large objects, large backcombed hair. Theatrical romantic is just smaller. They both look amazing with the ornateness, but soft dramatic looks great with middle size and big ornateness, and theatrical romantic look amazing with middle size and small ornateness. Theatrical romantics just look much more delicate, and they have smaller facial features. Classic. They can actually be pretty same size sometimes, but classic is much less prominent and much more average. So if you compare classic real classic, very proportionate, very evenly spaced everything. And soft dramatic will look not proportionate. Many things will be sticking out. You will be noticing different prominent things in their face, in their body. You perceive soft dramatic as curvy woman, like bigger woman, taller woman. And classic, you can't say that you perceive her as something. You perceive her as very average. Your eyes just can't hook on anything. Nothing is kind of standing out too much. You can't, when you're describing this person, you can't describe her as having sharp, angular features or very soft or very small or very tall. They're very average and proportionate. So if classics would do that huge backcombed hair, for example, something too voluptuous here, that can be a little bit too much for them. Classics look perfect when all the lines are pretty moderate. Not too much on this side, not too much on that side. Otherwise, it will be just sticking out a little bit, but as a contrast again. But it doesn't mean that you can't do this. It's just you are more aware now about what's happening. Soft classic. What's in common is softness. Soft classics, they're classics with some romantic in them, so they can be slightly softer. Soft classics are more proportionate. They're smaller normally, and they're not as prominent as lush. We also perceive them as slightly curvy, but they are on a slightly shorter side, and they do have that soft flesh, but they're much more delicate looking than dramatics and much more proportionate looking. Dramatic classic, what do they have in common? Probably stronger frame, and they can have same size. Dramatic classic, we still don't perceive her as a very curvy and lush woman. Dramatic classic is more on an angular and slightly squarish side. It's pretty proportionate body, it's pretty proportionate face, with slight angularity or sharpness. We don't perceive them as lush and voluptuous, and we don't remember their curves necessarily. Dramatic classics are less lush, less ornate. Natural, again, can be same size, sometimes if they stand together. But naturals, they don't look elongated. Normally naturals look more squarish in shape, and they have some musculature. Many naturals are slightly straightish in shape, or they do have the figure, but again, you don't perceive them as the hourglass figure. Naturals have blunt bones. They don't have sharp bones. Naturals have squarish bones, square and slightly rounded bones. And they are maybe slightly on a wider side. They can have maybe squarish shoulders. If we compare them to soft natural, some people really confuse those two. Soft naturals are not elongated. They have wider frame, wider bones. Their softness is in flesh, yes, so that is probably one thing that they have in common. But again, sometimes soft naturals can have some voluptuous figure too, so we can perceive them sometimes as curvy women. But soft naturals, they are more squarish, a bit shorter. Probably here we can see that some softness with some musculature. They look slightly muscular sometimes. Their bones, their facial bones, are more square and blunt. Blunt meaning sharp with rounded angle. They are not as sharp and not as prominent. They don't have sharp and prominent facial features. Flamboyant natural. I really recommend that you see this video, curvy flamboyant naturals. I really compare flamboyant naturals and soft dramatics in there. So you would kind of see the difference, because flamboyant naturals can also be curvy, like Gigi Hadid. She is curvy. So many people think that she probably is soft dramatic. No, she has totally different frame. Flamboyant naturals are also elongated. This is what can be in common. Longer arms, longer legs. Soft dramatics, we perceive them as lush and voluptuous, and very often flamboyant naturals have slightly more massive top part. Sometimes they are straight in figure, sometimes they do have that difference between waist and hips, but hips sometimes can have more vertical bones, so they still look on a stronger side, on more like a sporty side. And they just have very different vibe. If flamboyant natural is gonna dress like Sophia Loren, for example, that's gonna be a little bit too much of a dressed up, I would say. Too glamorized. So they need some freedom in their clothes and in their hair. And another thing, they look great in elongated things, and if there's no waist emphasis, you can actually watch my Jane Birkin style review that I just uploaded recently. So you can see how great she looks in those relaxed clothes, in those no waist emphasis all same color vertical line, like white from here to the very bottom, and it looks gorgeous on them. They don't look bulky with this. They don't look heavier with that. They don't lose anything because it's a different structure of the body and they're more frame dominant than curve dominant again. So their frame is what we perceive more about them. So when they're wearing clothes, it's gonna act differently. They don't need necessarily to accommodate the curves. If we talk about Gamine, Gamine is like a teenage girl, like a little girl. Gamines are small. Soft dramatics are normally tall. What did they have in common is probably sharpness of the bones, but actually you don't see that even when you compare them because they're just so different. Gamines are small, pretty straight in figure. They have narrow bones, narrow shoulders, smallish facial features. Gamines is a combination of opposites. Soft dramatic is elongated and curve dominant. Gamine is smallish and frame dominant, small frame dominant. So basically it's pretty hard to mix those two. Soft Gamine, same as Gamine but with some softness also. So what they can have in common is sharpness of their bones, sharpness of their facial features, and softness. Soft arms and legs, soft cheeks, for example. Yeah, they can have softer bum, softer chest area. What is different is soft Gamines is probably the most petite out of all. It doesn't mean that they all have to be petite. They can be pretty average in size and lower, but they can't look elongated. They can't be elongated. They can't look long. And soft dramatics, they do look long. They do look elongated and heavy. If we talk about flamboyant Gamines, flamboyant Gamines is same as Gamines, but flamboyant Gamines is Gamine with some drama in them. They can have elongated limbs, elongated arms and legs, but it's all within smallish frame. They are slightly tomboyish. They have very interesting playful facial features. They do also have combination of opposites, but they have a little bit more drama in them. They are broadly angular. They're not broad. They're broadly angular. That is the difference. Soft dramatics, again, it's pretty hard to mix those two because soft dramatics on a longer side, they are curve dominant. They have softness and sharpness and very prominent facial features. And flamboyant Gamines, they can have something prominent and something not prominent, and all that in a smallish frame. And very often flamboyant Gamines are also on a straighter side. They can have some difference between waist and hips. For example, Audrey Hepburn, she's flamboyant Gamine. You can actually check my Audrey Hepburn style review video. I talk a lot about flamboyant Gamines in there. She's one of the tallest probably flamboyant Gamines because normally they are on a smaller side, but at the same time, the bone structure itself, the proportions of her are very flamboyant Gamine. And of course, if we talk about all three Gamines, if we dress them like we dress soft dramatics in many cases, not in all cases, sometimes there are some certain outfits and clothes pieces that look great on everyone. And I'm gonna talk about this later in one of my next videos. But there are sometimes some things that work on soft dramatics that won't work on Gamines, on all Gamines. And this is probably big ornateness, drapes, curve accommodating fabrics and elongated fabrics. All that will just make all Gamines look like they're trying their mama clothes. It's just my personal perceptions. You might perceive it differently, so just don't let me mislead you. Imagine just a tiny small girl that is making huge hair, back-combed hair like that. Same amount of volume as like half of her face, for example. You see, and huge earrings. I hope that was interesting. Thank you so much. Let me know if that was helpful. Let me know if you was confused between soft dramatic and some other types, and that gave you some clarity about this now. I'm gonna continue this series too, along with my style review series. My style review series take me very much time because there's a lot of research, there's a lot of pictures that I have to show you, and I have to talk about every aspect of the style. And those videos are long, so I just don't have enough time right now just to prepare all that. It's a huge amount of information, but I'm still working on them, so I will be just throwing smaller videos in between. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Subscribe on my Pinterest for 13 boards as an inspiration for the body types. Also, you can subscribe on my Instagram. All the links I'm gonna leave down below. Also, you can become my sponsor or subscribe on my Patreon for some exclusive videos, some early access to these videos, and just if you want to support me and my channel. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.